All right, so let's get started. Today, again, we're talking about the difference between a red flag and a trigger. Like I said, you guys voted on this, and I completely understand why. Coming out of difficult relationships, you can be very, very sensitive. You can have a lot of wounds that can sometimes be kind of like you're walking around with your heart open, and things can trigger you quite easily sometimes, especially if you're in the middle of a healing process. And so yes, it can kind of be confusing when you're feeling something in relation to a dating relationship or a relationship you're in, trying to figure out, is this something I really need to be concerned about? Is this a glaring red flag, or is this something that's just personal to me? Is this part of my past history and something that I just need to work through, something that I need to heal? So, a red flag is something that is objective. It's an objective behavior. It's a red flag whether it's in my relationship or whether it's in your relationship. It's a very clear behavior that someone looking in from the outside could say, yes, that's a red flag. That's something to be worried about. Triggers, on the other hand, are subjective. They're very personal. So something that might trigger me might not trigger you at all. It's a personal thing, and it's different for each person and each situation. So a trigger is something that you feel sensitive to, something that hurts you. It could be a red flag, it could be a sign of abuse, but it could also not be. Like I said, it could just be something that is personal to you, something that is a wound for you. Here's another perspective. Alternatively, there could be a very glaring red flag and it might not trigger you. How many of you have experienced that? I know I have in the past. There were lots of red flags and I wasn't even being triggered for some of them. Some of it I was just used to. So let me know if that has gone on for you. If you've actually been in a situation where there were red flags, but you weren't triggered, or you didn't notice, or it just kind of went whoop right over you. So a red flag and a trigger are not the same thing. They're very, very different. So just because you feel an uncomfortable emotion doesn't necessarily mean it's a red flag or something to be concerned about. It could be, but it's not an automatic thing. So the reason I say this is because in relationships, you are going to be triggered. Even in the healthiest relationship, there's going to be things that come up that hurt. Because healthy relationships are about vulnerability. They're about opening up. And especially when you've been in difficult relationships in the past, when you get into a healthy relationship, a lot of the past wounds come up to be healed for the purpose of healing them. But a healthy relationship is not trigger free. So let me see what some of you guys are saying here. Yeah, Karen is saying, I'm not triggered by red flags. Yeah, that's a prime example, Karen. I just kind of shrugged them off. Exactly. Yeah, that can happen a lot. I'm so used to being treated poorly that it's just normal. Karen, thank you for sharing that. Yes, this is what happens very often. The red flags don't trigger us, or sometimes they do. Sometimes they do, and we just brush them off. So I'm so glad that you guys brought up this topic. It's a really, really great topic to dive into because it takes some discernment to figure this out. And a lot of times you do need some outside, objective, professional support to really help you to get clarity on what's going on here. So what we're going to do, I'm going to give you an example of something that is a trigger, but is not necessarily a red flag. And then we're going to go through a list of some very objective, clear red flags. So you guys have that clarity. So here's an example of something that could be triggering, but doesn't mean it's a red flag. So let's say you're with someone, you're dating them, you've been on, I don't know, like 4, 5, 6 dates, and they make a comment about women in general. Okay? It's kind of just like an offhand comment. It's not offensive. It's just something that they believe about women, right? But this could be something that you're particularly sensitive to because of your past trauma. Maybe it just hits a sore point because of something you experienced in the past. It's not necessarily a red flag. Maybe they just believe something that you don't. Or they could be objectively wrong about it. But if you have a discussion about it and they're hearing your perspective, they're not being dismissive, they're saying, okay, I hear you, here's what I think, maybe you guys just disagree about it. That's okay. That's normal in a relationship. It's normal to have different perspectives and to see things differently and to not always agree on things. But as long as the person that you're dating is hearing your opinion, being respectful, and just saying, I hear you, I think this way, I disagree, that's okay. That's not a red flag. Now, does it mean that this doesn't trigger you? Absolutely not. This could be very, very triggering for you. But it's not an indication that this is not the right person for you or that this relationship is not healthy. So does this make sense so far, you guys? Please let me know in the comments here while I drink some water. So that's an example of how you could be triggered, but it's not necessarily something bad here. Okay, so let me see what you guys are saying. Maya says, yeah, brushing off red flags is a definite, or just being used to it and ignoring it. Yes, exactly. So we can't take the perspective of, if I'm triggered, this is definitely a red flag, or the perspective of, if it's a red flag, then I will be triggered. Doesn't work like that. All right, so good. This is making sense so far. Perfect. So, like I said in the beginning, I'm not sure if you guys caught it, but if you are questioning whether something you're experiencing is a genuine red flag, or if maybe it's just a trigger and it's something that you need to do some healing on, drop it in the comments and I'll answer it out here for everyone. Excuse me, guys. Okay, so red flags. What is a red flag? I'm going to go through just a few of them. This is not an exhaustive list. I don't have that much time here on the live today because I want to make sure I save some space for some of your questions here. So a red flag is if someone is being rude. Like if you go out to a restaurant and they're kind of rude to the wait staff, they're not very nice. That is a red flag. That's something to be concerned about because that could translate into your relationship. So another red flag is inappropriate social behavior. Like what I mean by this is like telling a crude joke or being like really, really sarcastic, taking things that don't belong to you, parking illegally and just being like, it doesn't matter. Those are red flags. Also things like drinking too much, doing a lot of drugs. That's an objective red flag. Pushing you to do anything that you don't want to do, especially sexually. That's a red flag. So as you guys can see here, these are very, very clear, objective behavioral signs that this might not be the right person for you. This might be an unhealthy relationship partner. If they're very, very jealous, it's normal for there to be some jealousy in a healthy relationship, but it shouldn't be excessive to the point where they are questioning your every move and they want to look at your phone all the time. That's a sign of too much jealousy, and that is a red flag. Also, as you guys are as I'm going through this, please let me know if you have experienced some of these red flags in your relationships or past relationships that you've had. So another red flag, and I talked about this before in some of my other videos, is telling you that every single one of their exes is crazy. That's actually a big red flag because it tells you that this person really hasn't taken much accountability for their part in the relationship. And probably they have kind of driven their exes to that point. So that is a red flag here. Also telling you how perfect you are. If you meet someone and all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, you're the most amazing thing ever, you're perfect. That's a red flag. It's a red flag that someone is putting you up on a pedestal and not seeing you realistically. And that happens a lot with narcissistic relationships. Let me know if you guys have experienced that one too. So another red flag is game playing, showing inconsistent interest in you, hot and cold behavior. They're all about you one day, and then the next day it's like you don't even exist to them. And then maybe they come back the next week and they're all about you, but then they disappear again. So yeah, that is a red flag here. Lisa is saying, I've experienced all of these red flags and ignored them all. Yeah, Lisa, I think many of us in this group have been there too. Yeah, Karen is saying lack of communication, won't respond to messages or calls. Yes, Karen, I was getting to that one. Yes, exactly. So while we're at it, yes, a lack of communication or inconsistent communication. Like in the last thing I was talking about, if sometimes they're there and sometimes they're communicating, but then other times, they leave you on red for days at a time. They don't get back to you. That is a red flag. So let's see here. Marlene is saying, my ex would wait in the parking lot when someone was looking for a spot. We were leaving, but he didn't want them to park in the spot we were leaving. Oh my gosh. Just cruel. Yeah, that's a giant red flag. I would agree. Someone who's just doing that to be mean and to hurt someone, yes, take that into consideration for sure. So another red flag is showing indifference to your life, your hobbies, your interests. So someone who's just like, enough about her, let's talk about me. That's a red flag. They talk about themselves excessively. It doesn't leave much room for you or your emotions and feelings in the relationship. Another red flag is being unapologetically late all the time. Now, no one is perfect here. People are going to be late, but it's perfectly normal to be late and say, hey, I'm running 5 minutes late. There's traffic. Sorry, I'll get there soon. But if someone shows up really late consistently and isn't apologetic about it and just deal with it, that's a red flag. It's a red flag that they're not very considerate. So Maya is saying, what if his best friend is all these red flags and I'm very uncomfortable around him, but when I address this to my partner, he reacts okay. Then I will just never invite him again. That's a tough one, but he is his only friend of 30 years. Maya, that's one where I think you'd have to sit with yourself. It sounds like maybe you've done that. And if it really is to the point where you just don't want this person around, then it's okay that he doesn't invite him over. If he still wants to see him, maybe they go out and do stuff by themselves. They don't have to come to your house. He can go see that friend on his own. So yeah, that is okay though. If someone is really making you uncomfortable, you don't have to let them be in your house. That's a boundary. And I might do that too. I think I would. So another red flag when you're dating is if someone doesn't take you out on a real date, like they just want you to come over to their house or they come over to your house and there's no mention of going out or doing things outside of the house, that's a red flag. That's a red flag that intimate relationships could be the only thing that this person is interested in. Okay? So a couple more here, and then we're going to go into some of the questions here. But a couple more here are really only being capable of small talk or very superficial conversations. So if you find yourself in a relationship where someone really can only talk about the weather or how their day went and they're not able to go into a little bit deeper subjects like how they're feeling about things or what they value, that's a red flag because that means you're not going to be able to get a lot of intimacy and connection with this person. Oh, so Maya's following up here. He influences my partner totally, and my partner behaves completely different when his friend is around. Okay. Yeah, so Maya, I would draw that boundary. I would say, okay, yeah, I don't want him to come over. If you want to see him, you can see him outside of our house. And I think that would be a perfectly reasonable boundary to draw. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. So another red flag is having a sense of humor that is really sarcastic or really belittling, or it can almost fall into the category of bullying, that's a red flag. That's a red flag that someone is really just not empathetic and sensitive to other people's feelings. And then one more here. Another red flag is mentioning things about you that this person thinks you need to work on. So this is not in the discussions of the relationship or things that you are having challenges with. This is just when someone's like, hey, I think you need to work out more. Excuse me? That's a red flag. That's something that you want to watch out for. So is this making sense here so far? These are the very objective red flags that you need to look out for. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. There are more. If you are interested in that, you can Google that, or, my clients, when they work with me, they get a full, extensive list of the red flags. So if you're interested in that and you're interested in working with me, just comment Real Love or message me and I'll reach out to you. Okay, so what do you do if you are not sure if it is a red flag or if it is something that is just triggering you? And this, like I said, you guys, in the beginning, this can be so hard to determine sometimes when you're in the thick of it and that trigger is so strong and your emotions are so strong and you're feeling so hurt. It's hard to tell. And so this is where getting your professional support comes in. I still continue to do this in my own relationship. I get professional support now just like I did previously because it isn't clear. It isn't always clear, and everyone needs help with this. So make sure you get that professional support, because here's what can happen sometimes. If we've been in toxic relationships, abusive relationships, and we're getting back out there and dating, and we get triggered by something, we could potentially sabotage a good relationship because we didn't know the difference. We might have thought that this was a red flag, but actually it was just our own personal trigger and it was okay. Your partner was showing up in a healthy way. It was just something that really hurt you, okay? And so you don't want to sabotage a potential healthy relationship because of something that you were triggered about. So this is what I do for my clients. I walk them through this process because it is not easy to tell you guys. I do this every week. Like, my clients message me, is this something to worry about? And I either say yes or no. But my recommendation here is to get support. I'm always going to say this because it's so helpful. But this is really important if it's not clear to you, especially if you're a little bit more sensitive and vulnerable because of your past, because of where you are in your healing process. So if you guys are looking for support, this is just a small part of what I do in my healing program. If you're interested in hearing more about it, again, comment Real Love or message me. Okay, so let me see what the comments are here. So Maya says, I'm afraid he would choose him over me. Thank you for bringing this up. This is a tough one. And Maya, what I would say is, if this breaks the relationship, then it wasn't a relationship worth saving. If setting that boundary is enough to make this person say, nah, you know what, I want to hang out with this person, I want him to come over to the house, it's not the right relationship for you. And I know it's very difficult. It's easier saying that than actually doing it. But this shouldn't be a deal breaker in a healthy relationship. A healthy relationship partner would understand. They would be empathetic. And probably they wouldn't want to hang out with someone who had that many red flags going on to begin with. They probably wouldn't be comfortable around them. So I totally get the concern, but if he does choose him, choose the friend, then so be it. You would be better off in that situation. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so yeah, Lisa agrees with me too. Yeah. Okay, so how do I say your name here? Gleese? I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So what about being best friends with their exes? Oh, great one. They're very good friends for over 10 plus years and had a 1-year relationship a couple of years ago. This friend is now engaged to a man. Tricky because this is a same-sex situation. Yeah, that is very tricky. Here's what I would say. This is not a red flag. Being friends with an ex is not a red flag in and of itself. It completely depends on the circumstances and how that friendship feels to you. So if this friendship, if your partner has a friendship, a very close friendship with an ex that takes priority at times over your friendship, your relationship, then that is something to be concerned about. If they're spending an excessive amount of time hanging out with their friend, talking to them late at night on the phone, that would be something to be concerned about. But if this is a friend where they just hang out from time to time, they speak occasionally, and you feel like you're still the number one priority in the relationship, that would be okay. Would it still be triggering at times? Yes, probably. And if you felt that you needed to work this out in couples therapy, that would be a perfectly reasonable thing to do as well. So I hope that this answers your question. It really depends on how you feel in the relationship. I can tell you that I had a situation with an ex where they were friends with other people that they've dated or people of the opposite sex, and it was super triggering because, well, first of all, this was with someone who was narcissistic, so it just made our relationship feel so unstable, and it didn't feel like he was fully there. But I have had relationships like the one I'm in now where this person did have friends of the opposite sex, but I didn't feel threatened at all. They didn't talk to them that much, maybe just on occasion, and I still felt like I was the priority in the relationship. So yeah, it really, really depends here. And thank you so much for asking that question. Okay, Lisa says, can you give some examples of triggers? Yeah, Lisa, so I gave an example earlier. Let me give you another one. So let me think here. So yeah, for me, like a lot of the triggers that come up for me in my relationship are things that sometimes like my partner will say things that I sometimes take the wrong way. He's not being abusive, he's not doing anything wrong, but it's something that happened to me in the past. Someone said this in the past to me in a way that was not okay. And so that triggers me. And so it's difficult for me emotionally in that moment. But what makes the relationship healthy is after I take some time to calm down a little bit, we talk about it and we say, hey, here's what happened. This thing happened that triggered me a little bit. I was a little upset by that. Can you explain what you meant here? And my partner will do that. And usually it's fine. It was innocuous. It was something that I just took personally. So I hope that helps explain a little bit more. Lisa, usually it's things that are just emotionally upsetting, but they don't mean that you should be worried about this being the wrong person for you. So Maya's saying, yeah, I knew this. I'm glad you said so. Okay. I'm glad that helped. Yeah, she says, Maya's saying, I know this myself, but just keep postponing to say what I think. It's so hard. It's so hard, especially, Maya, in the case where you feel like your relationship is on the line. It may very well be. It might not be, but it may very well be. And better to know that now than to spend more time in a relationship where you're not getting your needs met or you feel unsafe. Like if this person does make you feel very unsafe in your house, that's not okay. So yeah, I feel for you. Okay. So yeah, Glee says, yeah, my biggest concern is being out back into a triangulation situation. Yes. So this was in reference to the question about being best friends with an ex. Yeah, that is not what you want. And if that's what it's feeling, then I would say yes, that is something that you would want to be concerned about. And that is something that, yeah, maybe you need to go to therapy and address. Or if it's continuing to happen, and you guys have worked on it, it might not be the right relationship for you. So yeah, great question here. So yeah, Lisa, I hope that explains it a little bit better. But again, I highly recommend for you guys to get professional support because each situation is so different. Just like with the best friends with an ex's situation, it completely depends on the individual circumstances and how your partner is in general. Because a lot of these things, like with the best friends thing, if your partner is in all other ways really good to you, they show up, they listen, they're supportive, then it's probably okay. But if they are having this close relationship with an ex and they also don't show up in other ways, they're not supportive, they're not always listening, then that is a red flag because there are other extenuating circumstances in the relationship. So it's not always so crystal clear. So, okay, let me see what else is coming through here. So Maya says, I know my partner is in a toxic relationship with his friend and is the victim in this case and is afraid to lose him or say something to him. Yeah, that's really tough, Maya. And it's the kind of thing where you can't do this for him. It sounds like he clearly needs to leave that relationship, but you can't make him be ready to do that. He's got to choose it on his own. He's got to be ready to do it. So really, the only thing that you can do is to set those boundaries and say, this is what I'm okay with and this is what I'm not. I'm not okay with him coming over. And that's it. You kind of have to just like wash your hands of it and see what he does. So tough though. So tough though. So Suzanne is saying, I notice red flags now, but I do have triggers that are so bothersome that it makes me withdraw and go within myself. Suzanne, I can relate to that too. So if this is happening to you and to anyone here, I highly recommend getting professional support. The specific support that I can offer is releasing the emotional baggage that is contributing to these triggers. So if you find yourself, Suzanne, or anyone that's watching, if you find yourself getting really, really triggered constantly, that is a sign that there's a lot of emotional baggage still going on and you need some help to work through that, to release it. The methods that I use, it's so powerful, it releases it very, very quickly, much longer than just talking to someone. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me too. So you're welcome, Maya. All right, let me see here if there's anything else I wanted to share with you guys. Oh, so yeah, so what I wanted to share also is that something that I do in my program is I give you actual scripts of what to say if you're encountering a red flag or if you're just simply being triggered. Because a lot of times we don't know what to say or what to do to either save this situation or to safely exit. So that is what I help you do. I take all of the guesswork out of this process for you. And I also help you to figure out if this is a relationship that can be saved or if it can't. Because a lot of times that's what we really need to know. Can this be saved? Can this person change? Can I get my needs met or not? And so please don't try to do this on your own. You can drive yourself crazy. I know in the past that's what I did. I tried to do all this by myself. I was Googling stuff. I was reading stuff. It was somewhat helpful, but I really needed to talk to someone about my specific situation, my specific case. And the way I explain this is learning how to be in a healthy relationship or learning how to date well is a skill. And so you wouldn't go into college expecting to know everything from the beginning without taking a course, right? Like you wouldn't expect to know how to program a computer without learning how to do it. And so learning all of these things, learning how to distinguish a red flag from a trigger is a process. It's a learning process. And you do need those skills to be able to have a healthy relationship. So get a mentor, get somebody who can teach you how to do this, get somebody who can help walk you through this process. It is a lifesaver, ladies, I promise you, it's so worth it. And what's also helpful when you have a mentor is someone can keep you accountable. Because that's some of the hardest part, right? Like kind of what Maya was describing here. It's so hard to take these steps. And when you have that support, you have someone to help keep you accountable, to say, hey, all right, like you wanted to do this. Let's do it. Let's take that step. And I'm here to support you. Okay. So I have some spots available in my program this month. If this is the type of support you're looking for, reach out to me. And let me see here if you guys have any more questions. I'm going to let this run a little bit more so you guys have a chance to drop in the questions. And let me make sure there wasn't anything else that I wanted to tell you about. And also, what a mentor can help you do is to make sure you're not missing any red flags. Because like a lot of you have talked about here, and this was the case for me myself, I missed a lot. I either just didn't see them or was like, oh, that's a normal relationship, when I was missing like really huge, giant red flags. So yeah, Karen, sure, I will message you, no problem. All right. I don't think there are any more questions, but let me give it a minute here. But thank you guys for participating in this live. And it's so fun when you comment. And so this can be like an interactive thing. So much more fun than me just sitting here and giving some information. It's great when you guys can interact with it and I can answer your questions and give you some clarity. All right, ladies, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week with a new topic. Bye-bye.